That you I'm looking down on, William?
Community service of cinema.
Happy to introduce William Robinson to our space again. He's been here before for a Marxist reading group with Jose Prado, who's standing right next to him. And Jose Prado has been a great collaborator of ours over the years. He's been running the Capital Reading Group for about 1.5 years now. And he's invited many amazing people who are actually some of them are in this room, including Jaime over there. And so I'm just gonna have Jose Prado take it away from here, and he'll introduce the teach-in, and he'll introduce William Robinson. So let's give it up for Jose Prado and William Robinson.
Okay. All right. I wrote a little introduction here this evening for our event, and I want to make sure that
Pour some of that juice on
I
hard stuff.
thank everyone. So first off, of course, welcome everyone. And thank you, Viva, again and again and again, for opening up your space here, arte. For the countless number of times the community has needed a place to read, to think, to learn, to speak, to sing, to share, and to make its way to the world that is ours and always has been ours. A world that hates, decadence, violence, exploitation, and a very crass and ignoble pursuit of profit has done much to take from us. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and welcome again. Thank you for however terrible are the conditions that have factored in our joining one another this cold and wet evening. Love, decency, peace, exaltation, and a very thoughtful and noble pursuit of justice are the paths to reclaiming the world for our children, and their children's children. When Professor William Robinson offered to lead our evening's discussion, I did not hesitate to agree and recognize the value and importance of this offer. Professor Robinson has been actively and continually pursuing justice for over 40 years. That he is here this evening, as he has been before, is a surprise to no one. When I asked Professor Robinson for his bio for this evening's introduction, he sent this very short and modest set of words that I'm about to read, that perhaps he can extend later this evening or some other time. In any case, these are the words of introduction. Professor Robinson is a distinguished professor of sociology, Latin American studies, Chicana and Chicano studies, and global studies at UCSB. Among his many books is We Will Not Be Silenced, The Academic Repression of Israel's Critics, that documents his work and the work of others who for many years now have been working on behalf of the Palestinian people. His talk this evening, Zionism, Imperialism, and Genocide in Palestine, will address the rapid and fascist destruction of Palestine for the incessant pursuit of everything, and the flim-flam confusion and euphemisms by which our decency and humanity might be torn from us. I turn the microphone over now to Professor Robinson. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we give the light? Can we come right forward, please? Yeah, thank you so much. I want to say thank you again to our hosts, Viva and Gabe, and to my co-organizer, Jose Prado. And I want to thank Oscar. Well, we're in the dark now. I want to thank Professor Oscar Soto, because he did the incredible artwork for the flyer that we've been sending around. And I want to say that when Jose and I thought about, we're not organizers. We have not been organizing the mass uprising in solidarity with Palestine. We have all the organizations, Jewish Voices for Peace. We have Unión del Barrio. We have Palestine youth movement. We have PSL is here, Peace and Freedom Party. We're not organizers. So we asked ourselves, what can we do? What is our contribution to this growing movement at such an urgent time? And we concluded that the best thing we can do is go into a deep analysis, a deep historical analytical context, a deep dive into three things that we want to talk about tonight. One is the history and the nature of Zionism, below the surface, below the details that we already know. Secondly is why genocide and why specifically now? And third, what is the relationship of this genocide and of Zionism to global capitalism that is killing us all, and specifically to the crisis right now, of the acute crisis of global capitalism. So those are the three deep analytical things that we want to share with you. You as the organizers, as our leaders in mobilizing our communities. So I hope it's not too blurry for you, but Palestine will survive. Palestine will be free. There's no doubt about that. Can we move on?
That's right. Right.
So the only thing, thank you for coming out in the rain. The only thing we can't blame the Zionists for is the weather. So here's the thing. We all know that South Africa now has lodged a lawsuit for genocide in the International Court of Justice against Israel. We know that as we speak now, the death toll is right around 25,000, but that's not correct because there's at least 10,000 people buried in the rubble. And even more significantly, there's tens and maybe, if we don't stop this genocide, hundreds of thousands of people that are going to die from starvation, from dehydration, from disease, and those deaths have already begun. That we all know. But here's the thing, that this genocidal pressure is built into the Zionist project itself. It should not come as a surprise. Zionism was always leading to this moment of absolute genocide. And the only way that genocide is going to stop, even if we achieve it now, that there's a ceasefire, the only way this is not going to culminate eventually in some type of genocide is either if we defeat Zionism, which we're going to go, again, a deep dive into what that is, or if we can manage to end unconditional US support for Israel. We know that if Washington called up Tel Aviv and said you have to have a ceasefire now, within 24 hours at the most, there would be a ceasefire. So our role is absolutely essential. You all know that. All right, you know that. Next slide, please. So in my view, half of our struggle is a head-on confrontation with the Zionist narrative, with Israel's legitimating myths and discourses. Extremely powerful. Don't let Zionists establish the narrative. Half of this is a battle to sway mass public opinion in the United States and worldwide, and we are up against a monster in terms of propaganda, disinformation, political operations, covert operations around the narrative, around the discourse, around the formation of public opinion, especially in the United States. So images are not crystal clear, but here you can see the images that the strategy, especially within this propaganda machinery, especially the strategy of equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, is an attempt to criminalize critique and condemnation of Israel, of Zionism, of genocide, and it's very, very powerful. And we're going to see why and how as we go along. Anti-Semitism is discrimination against or hatred of Jews, and has absolutely nothing to do with our struggle in defense of Palestinian freedom. Can we go to the next one, please? So I want to say something about Zionist Hasbara. Hasbara is a Hebrew word, and it roughly translates into propaganda. And in fact, Israeli propaganda machinery, its Hasbara machinery, is probably the most powerful propaganda or psychological operations machinery on earth. And it's not just psychological operations, it's political operations, it's disinformation and misinformation and repression of speech. All around. The Israel lobby, which is too weak a word to refer to it as a lobby. There's hundreds of thousands of lobbies, there's 35,000 lobbyists in Washington. This is something more, it goes well beyond that. The Israel lobby, we'll just call it that, it's fused into the US political system. It's fused into our public institutions. It's fused into civil society in the United States and again around the world. But we're right here. This is our struggle right here. And I've experienced this myself. I'm sure all of you have as well. Journalists, politicians, academics, even activists, even some of us activists, we self-censor. We self-censor out of fear and out of intimidation. And I don't have to tell you the current wave of repression right now. People have lost their jobs. Professors have not gotten tenure. People are not hired across the board. Journalists, if they dare to publish anything, if they dare to say anything against the Israeli propaganda machinery, either nothing will be published or they'll simply lose their jobs. I myself, right now, as we speak, I'm facing a case against me at the University of California at Santa Barbara for speaking out of my classes about Palestine. And it's not the first time. In 2014, well, I'll come back to that shortly, but I also want to say part of what happened in 2014, because that was the previous siege on Gaza. It took thousands of lives and tens of thousands of injured, but it's nothing compared to what's going on right now. But at that time, one of the things I said to my students is that there was a Jewish journalist in some Jewish publication in Kansas that had published an article which was mildly critical of the siege at that time of Gaza. And her editor the very next day was fired. Just one example out of thousands and thousands. So the Hezbollah machinery is literally lodged in the Israeli state, in Mossad, which is the Israeli Secret Service, the CIA of Israel. There's actually Hezbollah offices in the IDF. The IDF and the Israeli Defense Forces, which, by the way, Israel is one of the most militarized societies on the planet. And the backbone of the Israeli state and the Zionist project is the IDF itself, those generals that are actually in the field waging this genocide. Hezbollah branches and all of these ministries of the Israeli state, and also in numerous front organizations in the United States. You may never know that these are extensions of the Israeli state. Just a few of them. The Anti-Defamation League has nothing to do with anti-defamation. AIPAC, the most well-known of all, the most powerful of all, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, the David Project, AMCHA, many of these are on campus, also on campuses and in high schools, all over, all of the institutions. I don't want to have turned the lights on, so I won't be able to read something that I wanted to read you from, but literally, there's a book called The Handbook of Hezbollah, which is distributed to every Zionist college student and every Zionist who works in the public sphere and the civil society organizations. I have a quote from the handbook. Maybe when the lights come on later, I can read it to you. But it literally says, it doesn't matter if you tell the truth. Don't try to argue with people. Just repeat the same line over and over. Whether it's true, whether it's not true, it doesn't matter. Repeat it over and over. Silence your critics and it tells you how to operate this repressive machinery. And I don't need to tell you that the Nazi minister of propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, developed these techniques. They're taken right out of Goebbels' playbook, the Hezbollah playbook. So with that little background, we have to confront head-on the Israeli legitimating discourse, its myths and its lies. And I know I'm talking to a group of activists and leaders of our community, so I don't need to tell you that. But no, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. But here's the ironic thing, that anti-Semitism is on the rise in the United States and around the world. It's on the rise because it's being promoted by the far right, the extreme right, including the evangelical Christian right. And it's this is the irony. It's the same right wing which backs and supports Israel to the last consequences. That's where any anti-Semitism comes from, backers of Israel. Now, that shouldn't come as a surprise. That we're going to see in the next few slides, there's an historic affinity between Nazism and Zionism. Hey, no, there are not two warring sides. It's misframed. We have to be careful the language we use, because it plays into Zionism. It's not an Israel-Palestine conflict, any more than we would have framed the struggle that Africans waged against apartheid in South Africa as an African white conflict. The same way that the Zapatistas in Mexico, we would not say this is an indigenous Mexican conflict. That's not the framing for this conflict. This is something different, any more than we would say when Jews resisted the Nazis, when Jews managed to get some weapons in the Warsaw ghetto and started shooting at the Nazis and trying to break out, we wouldn't say that this is a Jewish-Nazi conflict. So that is a deliberate misframing as two equal warring sides that each have their own issues and their own justified claims. So no, Israel does not have a right, in quotes, a right to defend itself, and Palestinian resistance is not external aggression. This is extremely important because you hear every word that comes out of every back door of Israel. The very first thing, Israel was attacked, it has a right to defend itself. Well, there's two things I want to say about that. The first is that, once again, we would not say if Africans during the period of apartheid in South Africa, when Africans were resisting the white racist minority regime, we wouldn't say that that apartheid regime in South Africa has a right to defend itself. We wouldn't say when somebody attacked the Nazis, oh, the Nazis has a right to defend itself. We wouldn't say when people resisted colonialism around the world during the 20th century, 19th and 20th century anti-colonial struggles, that the colonial powers that had invaded their countries had a right to defend themselves. That's first of all. But secondly, and this is the most important part, that states have a right to defend themselves from external aggression. The Palestinians are not an external force. They are in their own homeland. So we have to not fear the propaganda machinery of Israel. Israel does not have a right to defend itself, in quotes, and that needs to be broken down and explained as part of our struggle. No, Jews are not a people and do not trace their ancestry back to Palestine, and I'm going to break that down and go into that. How a religious faith community from around the world, how the Zionist projects tried to turn that into a nationalist movement of some people. And no, Israel is not a democracy. It's an illegal apartheid state, literally an outlaw state. Even by the bourgeois concept of democracy, it's not a democracy. It never has been. Next one, please. Okay. So the thing that most upsets the Zionists, and why? Because it cuts right to the very heart of their propaganda machinery and their manipulation through political operations, through psychological operations, and so forth, is to make these comparisons between Nazism, fascism, genocide, and Zionism. That has been turned into a taboo by Zionist propaganda and intimidation machinery. Yet, as we're going to see, and I'm going to actually ask, and it's not now, but in a little while, I'm actually going to ask the light to come on so I can read you passages that Zionists have written explaining their own project. And that comparison is analytically accurate, it is empirically accurate, it is historically accurate. Zionism and Nazism are cousins, and I'm going to get to that. Maybe that shocks some of you, maybe it doesn't shock most of you, but we have to break that taboo, and we are in the process of breaking it with the incredible upsurge in solidarity with Palestine. There's a quote here, and I actually am quoting myself here. In 2009, there have been, putting aside this genocide now, outright genocide, there were two other major sieges of Gaza. It resulted in thousands of injuries, thousands of deaths. One of them was late 2008 to early 2009. It ended the day Barack Obama took office. That was intentional. It started the day he won the elections, November 4, 2008. All of that was intentional. That was the first major siege of Gaza after there were elections in 2006 and Hamas won those elections. Many of you know this history. The next one was 2014 that I've already mentioned. But in the 2009 one, that's when, I've been in solidarity with Palestine since I came of age politically, but it was never an area that I knew a whole lot about. In 2009, I denounced that siege of Gaza at UCSB, and that Zionist lobby came down on me like a ton of bricks with their agents inside the administration at UCSB and outside and all over the United States, all the way from Washington. And there was a 6-month battle. My graduate students at the time, my undergraduate students, acted by the chancellor's office, my colleagues, they all came out in defense of me, not necessarily because they agreed with me, but because they defended my academic freedom. But then I was quiet for a while. Then 2014 was the next giant siege on Gaza, and I published a long article trying to show what we're going to be talking about here tonight, what we started talking about here tonight. And this is a quote that I'm just quoting myself, but I want to do this because I want to hammer home that the equation of historically of Zionism and Nazism, they come out of the same roots. They're two branches of the same tree. And this is what I wrote in 2014. Zionists and defenders of the Israeli state take great offense at any analogy because the Nazis and Israeli state actions including the charge of genocide, in part because the Jewish Holocaust is used by the Israeli state and the Zionist political project as a mechanism of colonial legitimation. So that to draw such analogies is to undermine Israel's legitimating discourse. It is crucial to point this out because this discourse now legitimates Israeli genocide. And in 2014, I called it slow motion genocide. Now it is all out, straight on genocide. Next slide, please. Okay. So I want to take the story back. We're going to go into the birth and why I'm saying this about genocide. About Zionism. But I want to take the story back a little bit historically because we have to frame this historically. Palestine, if you can see on the map, and I'm so sorry that there's not enough room for you guys out there. We're looking at a map of the Middle East, Southern Europe, North Africa. But of course, this is historic Palestine right over there. And because this is a key point for East-West, North-South, for old world global trading, it's always been a center of civilizations and a center of empires. And so over the thousands of years, over the last 4,000 or 5,000 years, it's been a historic crossroads for so many, first the Egyptian Empire, Persian Empire, Greek Empire, Roman Empire, the Assyrian, the Persian empires. There's been one imperial center over another that have controlled Palestine. But during none of these imperial empires in 4,000 years, have the people themselves been displaced from their land and subject to genocide. They simply exchange one ruling class above them that they have to pay tribute to for another ruling class. So this would be, here you're seeing the Arab Empire that flourished from the 700s to the 1300s. So the blue there is the Arab Empire, if you can see that, and this is going to become important in just a moment. The yellow over here is the Byzantine Empire. So there's Palestine right there. Next one, please. So if we were to fast forward then to the Ottoman Empire from 1517 to 1990, the Palestinians of Palestine are now have new overlords, again, on the top of their existing society, which is not destroyed, not smashed into the ground, but they have new people that they tribute to, which is now the Ottoman rulers. And this is the height of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans lost all of that empire and is reduced to what is today the Republic of Turkey. But then what happens is World War I breaks out, and World War I, the Ottoman Empire, or what's left of it, sides with the losing side in World War I. This is going to become extremely important. It sides with the Austro-Hungarian Empire and with Germany. And so it loses, it's on the losing side in World War I. The next slide, please. Okay, the reason that's so important is now when we're at World War I, we're no longer talking about the ancient world and tributary empires, where a new ruler comes along from all the way in the top and says, okay, you guys continue your life as you are in Palestine and elsewhere, but now you have to pay us tribute to the new rulers on top. Now we're talking about capitalism. Now we're talking about the extension of capitalism around the world, about the world capitalist system. So Palestine now, what happens at the end of World War I, and again, if you can see the map, this is what's left of the Ottoman Empire in the midst of World War I, just a little bit part of it, but Palestine is still part of the Ottoman Empire. And again, the Ottomans lose to World War I, and the British and the French, of course, in the United States, are on the winning side in World War I. We know that that war was a war among rival capitalist powers, but it was also a war of the expansion of capitalism. So now capitalism is going to dramatically expand in the Middle East and in Palestine with grave consequences for the Palestinians. But so what I want to say here is that the League of Nations is established at the end of World War I, specifically in 1919. But what happens is that the losing powers of World War I lose their colonies. So what's left of the Ottoman Empire, which includes Palestine, is lost to the victors, and France and England now carve up what today is the Middle East into their own colonies. And the British now take over from the Ottomans under the League of Nations mandate system and says, now Palestine is our colony, a British colony. This is now going to initiate an alliance of Zionism and world imperialism. And that's going to lead to the creation of the State of Israel, founded, because this is the importance now of a capitalist empire, not free capitalist, founded as a Middle East outpost of post-World War I, but later, more importantly, post-World War II global capitalism. The dramatic expansion of capitalism and conquest by capital of the Middle East is going to take place through British colonialism at this time and later through the Zionist project. Next slide, please. Okay. So the mandate system under the League of Nations, and a lot of the world, all of Africa was still a colony. The third world didn't have much of a voice in the League, what would become the third world, didn't have much of a voice in the League of Nations. But even at that, the League of Nations called mandates this territory from the losers in World War I that was turned over to the victors, especially Britain and France and Middle East. The mandate said, you are mandated to administer this territory and lead it towards independence. So the British was mandated by the League of Nations, the predecessor to the United Nations, mandated to lead Palestine to independence, to give the Palestinians their independence. And what did the British do? They turned around in the infamous 1917 Balfour Declaration. Balfour is the British foreign minister. Turned around and said, no, forget about that. We're not following what we're supposed to do, which is hand over independence to the Palestinians so they can have their own state. We're rather going to turn this territory over to become a Jewish state. Next slide, please. Which is why, to this very day, you speak to older Palestinians, they say this story didn't start with the Zionists, didn't start with the United States. It started with British colonialism, with the British. So here's some historic maps. So this, by the way, I know you can barely see it, but this was the Zionist original plan. The original plan for what they called the Greater Israel, this is Palestine, this is a good portion of Saudi Arabia, a good portion of Iraq, a good portion of Syria, a little bit of Turkey down here, and a good portion of Egypt, the Sinai and around the Sinai. That was the Zionist original plan for what they wanted. Of course, they didn't get that. This is the British mandate. This British mandate was where the British colonized after World War I, again with the mandate by the international community to turn that land over to the Palestinians in an independent, free Palestinian state. That lasted from 1917 to 1922. This map up here, the British decided to divide that mandated land into two pieces of land. One they called Transjordan. That today is the country of Jordan. We have one Jordanian here. A comrade. And then the other was Palestine. They reduced Palestine. Okay, and then you can see where it's located in what's today the Middle East. Next slide, please. So now this brings us up to the really core of tonight's talk, which is what is Zionism? So Zionism originates as a far-right, racist, proto-fascist political ideology among a small minority of Eastern European Jews. And it will remain a minority, far-right, fringe ideology until the 1930s, until the Holocaust, until the Nazis come along. Now, here is the thing. Zionism is part of late 19th century racial nationalism. What was racial nationalism? It swept across Europe in the 1800s and into the 1900s to last century. We're now in the 21st century. And racial nationalism was an ideology that there are biologically constituted races. We know there's no such thing biologically as races. We're all the same race. And each biologically constituted race belongs to a specific piece of territory on the planet. And that territory should be their national homeland. And so we're very familiar right here with Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny is the US version of racial nationalism. That there's these races and every race is supposed to have their own so-called purified national homeland. But the Nazi program, this is the comparison. Nazi ideology was identical, that there's a pure German race, an Aryan race that goes back thousands of years and then manifested in Teutonic tribes. And so Germany belongs to a pure race of German people. That's Nazi ideology. That is Zionist ideology. The only difference is that Jews now are supposed to be a biological category of people that are only missing their own historic biologically determined piece of territorial land, which of course will become Palestine. So I want to pause for a minute. I said just once I want to turn the lights on to read one thing. If we can just pause for a moment and put the lights on. So this is a passage that's quoting Zionist leaders. The early Zionists, well, you can't see that now, but Herzl is considered the founding father of the Zionist movement. He wrote his famous book in 1896 titled, well, I have the title up there, I forgot the title, but the famous book, which is the Bible of Zionism. And then in 1897 was the first Zionist Congress that was held in Vienna. So first I'm going to be quoting from the early generation, Herzl's generation of Zionists, and then I'm going to quote from Zionists in the 1930s, when already they're saying, here's the Holocaust. This gives us a chance now to push forward Zionism, utilizing the Holocaust as the excuse for Zionism. And this is the racial nationalism. It may shock you. This is the ideology of the exclusively Jewish Zionist state that took over Palestine. So a scattering of quotes. The Zionist leader, here we're quoting a Zionist leader from the late 1800s, convinced that Jews were had shared an homogeneous biological origin. And it is needed to straighten our backs and our body and character alike. For the ancient blood to be revived, the Jews a soil, and only Zionism could give them that. This is a quote from the early Zionists. There's a basic ideological, Jewish people are a blood community. These are the exact quote. Jewish people are a blood community. They share a basic hypothesis that Jews have a distinctive blood that sets them apart from other people. The intellectual father of the Zionist right from the 1930s to present, this guy only died a few years ago, had no doubt about it. And here's the quote. It is quite clear that the source of the national sentiment cannot be found in education, but in something that precedes it. And what is it? I thought about this question and answered myself, in the blood. And I persist in this view. The sense of national identity is inherent in man's blood, in his physical, racial type, and only in that. The people's mental structure reflects their physical form even more perfectly and completely than does the individual. And that is why we do believe in mental assimilation. It is physically impossible for a Jew descended from several generations of pure unmixed Jewish blood to adopt the mental state of a German or a Frenchman, just as it is impossible for a Negro to cease being a Negro. For Jabotinsky, now this is the person being quoted in the 1930s, nations arrive from racial groups, and their biological origin forms the psyche, today's mentality, of peoples. Since Jews do not have a common history or a common language, not a territory that they have inhabited for centuries, what might have given rise to a common ethnographic culture, one logically concludes as follows, and then you continue the quote of the Zionist. National terrain, language, religion, shared history, all of these do not constitute the essence of a nation. They are the merely description of it. But the essence of a nation, the alpha and omega of its distinct character, is the special physical attribute, the formula of its racial composition. In the final analysis, when all shells arising from history, the climate, natural surroundings, and outside influences have been removed from the nation, it is reduced to this racial kernel. Race was always a scientific concept for Levinsky. They're continuing to quote this Zionist who only died a few years ago. He believed that even if there were no true pure races, there was a racial formula. And he was also convinced that in the future it would be possible by means of a blood test and a glandular secretion to have a system of classification based on these formulae, the Italian race, the Polish race, and of course the Jewish race. He believed in the continued physical biological essence of the Jewish people, which had sprung from a uniform ethnic and territorial source in which it must return as soon as possible. This was the focus of the entire historical thinking. And finally, bear with me, now cite another modern 20th century Jewish Zionist, believed that the Jewish nation was primarily a biological entity constituted by a hereditary unit, which alone gave substance to the national demands. The early Middle Ages, through a long process of selection, that gifts have been strengthened. A terrible condition under which the Jews have lasted for 500 years necessitated, this is quoting the Zionists, a bitter struggle for life in which only the cleverest and strongest survive. The result is that the Jew of today we have here is some respects a particularly valuable human type. And then it goes on. The reason I'm reading this passage is because those of you who know the history of racism here in the United States, and we can dim the lights, know that very well these are classical, not 19th and early 20th century scientific racism. Scientific racism. That there are biological categories, some are superior, some are inferior. In this case, Jews are superior and have a homeland that they need to occupy. So 1897 is the first Zionist Congress. Theodor Herzl had published his book, The Jewish State, in 1896, calling for a Jewish state somewhere in the world. Remarkably, he doesn't mention necessarily Palestine. He said that could be in Argentina. Herzl said, the founder of Zionism, that could be in Uganda. It could also be in Palestine. Other Zionists say, no, Herzl, wait, slow down. We should stick with Palestine because we can justify it on the basis of a mythical reading of the Bible. So Zionist, according to Zionist ideology, then the history of the Palestinian people is suspended with the Roman conquest of the Jewish kingdom in 70 AD. This now becomes the foundational myth or allegory of Jewish dispersal and exiles. Now, Jews are not a people any more than Christians are a people, any more than Buddhists are a people. Okay. Judaism is a faith community. It's a religion of universal values. Hey, Jews did not have a common history or a common language, nor a territory that they have inhabited for centuries. If you could move. Thank you. Late 1800s, the Zionists invented an historical myth of the Jewish people and Jewish homeland to justify a colonial project. The Nazis, again, did the same thing. The myth, the historical myth of an Aryan race going back millennia. The conquest of the Americas, the colonialism here, genocide and indigenous, the same thing, the historical myth of a pure-blooded Anglo race that had a manifest destiny to conquer and take over the United States. So there's nothing out of the ordinary about the Zionist project with regard to what's going on with rooting groups and with world racism and colonialism and imperialism at this time. Next slide, please. So we have the invention of the Jewish people. Now, we're not talking about the invention of the Jewish religion. Be clear on what I am saying here. That Judaism is one of multiple religions in Palestine, multiple cultures, multiple ethnicities, multiple histories, all mixed around over thousands and thousands of years of empire, the movement, the coming and going of people, of religions, of cultures, ideas, etc. But there's a very big burst of conversion, just like most Christians in the world, almost all Christians have been converted to Christianity. The majority of Jews in the world, who are not a people, but come from multiple cultures, multiple ethnic groups, multiple histories, became Jews by conversion. And one big burst of conversion was from the 2nd century BC to the 4th century AD, throughout the Mediterranean. There was, going back centuries and millennia, Arab Jewish kingdoms in southern Arabia, what is today Yemen. The Yemenis, who are trying to stop Israeli and now U.S. commerce in the Red Sea, they're Jewish, they were Jewish, they converted later to some other religion. They're Berber Jewish societies in North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Iranian, Persian Jewish communities in Spain, known as the Sephardic Jews in Italy, in Greece. And all of those communities around the Mediterranean converted during, again, that 600-year period of the Roman Empire. These were faith communities, religious communities, not a people. And then the largest mass conversion, which leads to the Eastern European, what we're talking about, Russian Jews, Ukrainian Jews, Polish, that area of the world, so-called Yiddish nation. That is a mass conversion that takes place from the 7th to the 12th century through the Khazar kingdom. This is people that were at the time Slavic or Turkish origin, and this empire, and you're going to see a map of where that empire was located between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, flourished from the 7th to the 13th century. The Khazar Empire was seeking, it decided to have mass conversion to Judaism because it was seeking to maintain its geopolitical independence from the Byzantine Empire, whose official religion was Christianity, and the Arab Empire, whose religion was Islam, was Muslim. So we'll get to the image in just a minute, but here now is the foundational myth, because it is the Eastern European small minority of Jews that developed the ideology of Zionism in the late 18th, early 19th century. The foundational myth, what we call in sociology, implanted memory, later developed by Zionism into settler nationalism, settler colonialism. Palestinian farmers, again, one empire after another, Palestinians, today Palestinians by the blood's mixed with people in and out that region for thousands of years, most likely descendants of the ancient Jewish communities, which are only one of many communities in Palestine historically. So here's the key point of all of this. In order to be able to claim a state and then go and colonize that state and then banish the people that are living in that territory, the Zionists must create the myth of a Jewish people who were sent into exile 2,000 years ago and are now returning to an original homeland and resuming their own history. And of course, the flip side of that is you have to erase the Palestinians. You have to remove them from their lands, but not just from the lands. You have to remove them from history. Next slide, please. So here's Palestine. And here's what is today Turkey. This was the Byzantine Empire. And up there was the Khazar Empire, the empire that decided to make Judaism an official religion in order to preserve its own geopolitical control from two other competing empires. And you can see that's Kiev right there. That's Ukraine, etc. Next slide, please. So here's the larger context, because now we're in the 20th century and now we're in world capitalism. Okay, there's the Zionism, colonialism, and imperialism. The late 1800s, the Russian Tsar, which the emperor of Russia, and the empire is under tremendous crisis. The Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution is on the way. It's going to be a little bit of time still before that happens. But in the face of that crisis, the Tsar exploits historic scapegoating. The Tsar encourages pogroms, that is, attacks against Jewish villages in what is today Russia and Ukraine, in order to have a scapegoat and a pressure release against the pressure against that empire. And that it's in that context of this scapegoating and of the upsurge in anti-Semitism and the pogroms in the late 1800s that Zionism is born. That's the breeding ground for the early Zionists. And there's a class basis to Zionism. It's Eastern European middle classes and intelligentsia. Zionism originally did not appeal to the Jewish workers. It did not appeal to Jewish peasantry or the upper classes. The majority viewed Judaism as a religion of universal values, not a nationality. To say this another way sociologically, Zionism was not the hegemonic ideology of the vast majority of Jews in Europe, much less all around the world. The Zionist position, and now this might shock you if you don't know this history, this is why I want to repeat that it is historically accurate to make the link between Nazism, Zionism, Anglo-Saxon racism in North America, etc. They're all branches of the same historic tree. Zionist position was it's futile to fight anti-Semitism in Europe. Here is the words of Herzl. I'm quoting from Herzl's diary. You can buy the book and read it. I achieved a freer attitude, and remember, Herzl is the father of Zionism. I achieved a freer attitude towards anti-Semitism, which I began to understand historically and to pardon. Above all, I recognized the emptiness and futility of trying to combat anti-Semitism. So with that as background, in this first generation of Zionists in the early 20th century, we have the rise of Nazism and World War II. Now Jews are refugees fleeing from the Holocaust. And those refugees trying to flee and get to safety are trying to head to England and the United States, a great portion of them. And they are turned away by England and the United States. They literally are filling up boats and going across the sea, the English Channel, and they're not allowed to unload themselves in London and seek safety. Another ship and other ships come and go into the harbor of New York. And the New York immigration authorities say, turn around and go right back to Germany. Some of them had to unload their same ship. They couldn't get off in New York, and they were sent to concentration camps and died. Others said, we better go to Palestine. Okay, and now it's only now that Zionism moves from this marginal fringe ideology to become a hegemonic ideology among European Jews. We're talking about the 1930s in the midst of the Holocaust. So why then, now the immigrants come into Israel, to Palestine. And now is the first time you get significant Palestinian Jewish tensions. No, this is not an age-old conflict whatsoever. Jews, Christians, Muslims got along just perfectly fine. There was no religious conflict in Palestine. There was conflict between ruling elites that controlled the land and collected tribute, et cetera, et cetera. There was conflicts with the Ottoman tributary elites. There was conflicts with the British. There was no religious conflict whatsoever. Now there is, and it's still not religious conflict. Never was, never is. But now the conflict between Jews and Palestinians start, and why? Because the immigrants coming now are the stormtroopers for the Zionist project. And the Zionist project is, and you all know the slogan, a land without a people for a people without a land. So this is part of universal mythologies of conquest. I want to pause for a minute. The idea that when capitalist modern day colonial conquerors conquer a land, that it's uninhabited, that it's just waiting to be conquered and civilized. So when the Europeans arrived in South Africa, densely populated by Africans, they said, this is an empty, barren land waiting for us to civilize it. When Anglo-Saxons and other Europeans came and genocided the indigenous where we are right now, they said the same thing. There were 20 million indigenous here in North America, which are the United States and Canada. That was reduced to 300,000 by 1892. But what was the official ideology, manifest destiny? This is a barren land, and we're going to conquer it and bring civilization. When the Germans moved into Poland and Eastern Europe at the beginnings of World War II, they said, this is empty land. This is going to give us breathing space. We're going to bring civilization. So all colonial conquerors, doesn't matter the particular nuances of their ideology, have this same ideology. So when Zionism says a land without a people for people without a land, it's again part of the same tree with multiple branches. Okay. Famously, you may remember this quote, gold in my ear. By the way, I want to mention another thing about Hezbollah and that propaganda machinery. Hollywood is a big part of it. And you see these films and you never know that it's Zionist propaganda, disgusting Zionist propaganda. And one of them is on Netflix right now, a whole movie about Golda Meir. Golda Meir was the prime minister of Israel somewhere in the late 1960s, don't quote me on the exact years. But before that, she was a Zionist terrorist who helped ethnically cleanse Palestine for the creation of a Jewish state in 1941. And as prime minister, she famously said, it's not as if there was a Palestinian people and we came and threw them out and took away their country away from them. They did not exist. Well, of course, that's exactly what the Zionist project did. Next slide, please. So here's the key concluding point on this. We'll be moving towards a conclusion very soon. The alliance of Zionism and imperialism leads to the creation of Israel. At the end of the 19th century, the end of the 1800s, is a new wave of European colonization and imperialism. We all know that. This is when Lenin writes his famous book, Imperialism, the Latest Stage of Capitalism. And the late 1800s, Africa is still all independent. The end of the slave trade in Africa is independent. Within 20 years, Africa will all be a colony, as you're going to see in just a moment. Don't advance the slide, but you'll see the image in just a minute. India had already been colonized, but the rest of Asia is now colonized in the late 1800s, early 1900s. This massive wave of new round of colonialism and imperialism, the Middle East will now be carved up and colonized. And that's this context of the alliance now between Zionism and imperialism. Now, more shocking things about what Herzl says. Again, the father of Zionism, who wrote the Bible of Zionism. He says, the Jewish state has to be built under the wings of a powerful European country and must serve European interests in the new era of imperialism and colonialism. The first Zionist Congress, held in 1897 in Vienna, charges Herzl with finding an imperial backer. And Herzl writes, I'm quoting from his published note journal, my movement can help Europe's imperial ambitions on two fronts, through draining off the surplus Jewish proletariat and through harnessing international capital. Herzl approaches the German Kaiser. He says, hey, German Kaiser, we'll go in alliance with you. Can you give us land somewhere in your domains? The Kaiser says no. He goes to the Pope. He says, hey, Pope, can you get us some land somewhere? The Pope says no. He goes to the Russian Tsar, the one who's whipping up pogroms, and says, can you get us some land and we'll have an alliance with Russian imperialism? Tsar says no. Then he finally turns to the expanding British Empire and he writes, and here's Herzl's quote, England with her possessions in Asia should be most interested in Zionism for the shortest route to India by way of Palestine. England and great politicians were the first to recognize the need for colonial expansion. This was Great Britain's ensign. This is why the Great Britain's ensign flies on all the oceans. And so I must believe that here in England, the idea of Zionism, which is a colonial idea, should be easily and quickly understood. That's right out of the founding father of Zionism's diary. British colonial minister Joseph Chamberlain agrees now to offer Zionism a colony anywhere. Now, this is the actual quote from Chamberlain. Anywhere in the English possessions where there were no white people as of yet. Okay. So European Jewish settler colony becomes a British strategy for imperial control of the whole Middle Eastern region at a time when the Ottoman Empire is breaking up and world capitalism is going to be expanding out into the Middle East. So that's the alliance of Zionism and imperialism, leading to the creation of Israel. Next slide, please. So along comes the Nazi Holocaust, partition, and the Nakba. From 1939 to 1945, 6 million Jews perished in the Nazi organized Holocaust. From 1946 to 1947, the Jewish Agency, which is organizing the conquest and colonization of Palestine, the Jewish Agency involves Zionist terrorist groups. Now, literally terrorism, literally paramilitary terrorist groups by the international definition today of terrorism. The Stern Group, the Irgun, and perhaps the most notorious of all, the Haganah. And they attack British and Palestinian targets to create chaos. In February 1947, the British say they cannot maintain order, and they call on the United Nations, which had just been established 2 years earlier, to take charge of Palestine. Then the United Nations partition plan divides Palestine, and in discussion, we should talk about why this was allowed to pass in the United Nations. The United Nations partition plan divides Palestine into Jewish and Arab states. 55% of the land is supposed to go to Jews, only 30% of the population, which had only 30% of the population, and only had 6% of the land. And then in 1948 is the war that the Zionists waged for ethnic cleansing to get rid of Palestinians off the land. Nearly, as we all know, nearly 800,000 Palestinians are expelled from the land. Over 500 villages are destroyed. The Zionists seize 80% of the land. Widespread massacres and ethnic cleansing. Israel establishes itself as an exclusively Jewish state. Now, I also want to pause. I don't want to put the lights back on, so I won't read the exact quotes, but only a few years ago. Okay, it's always been Israel, an exclusively Jewish state. I want you to think about that for a minute. This is an apartheid state. Just like apartheid South Africa was an exclusively white state. Imagine in the United States, there's an exclusively Christian state or exclusively white state. Well, we've had it de facto. Okay, but the Israeli Constitution says this is only a state for the Jews. Now, I don't want to turn the light on to read it to you. We can do it afterwards. But the Israeli Supreme Court a few years ago ratified that and literally said, I can't read, there is no Israeli nation, only a Jewish nation. I'm not paraphrasing. The exact quote of the Israeli Supreme Court a few years ago, from 1948 to the present. There is no Israeli nation, only a Jewish nation. Okay. So, thank you. So we have to see this now in the context of post-World War II capitalist expansion. Okay. And the Middle East is emerging. We're going to look in just a moment, and we are moving towards a conclusion. Thank you for those of you on your feet with no seats. But we have to see this now in the context of the dramatic expansion of world capitalism following World War II. There's no longer any territory that remains outside of the orbit of world capitalism in the late 20th century, of course, today in the 21st century. And especially central now to world capitalism is going to be oil. And oil, of course, at this time is almost exclusively, later it'll be elsewhere, almost exclusively in the Middle East. So, and this is a time when there's radical struggles against colonialism. Decolonization is threatening world capitalism to lose control of peoples and territories around the world. And so you have to guarantee a decolonization which will leave the former colonies in the orbit of, and controlled by world capitalism, especially by the Western colonial powers. And so Israel is going to be the outpost for this World War II expansion, a staging point for world capitalism as it expands out into the Middle East. Biden said in 1986, you've all heard this quote, if there were no Israeli state, we would have to invent one. And so what he's saying is we did need and do need the Israeli state there for world capitalist, Western and world capitalist control over all of the Middle East and this region of the world. Next slide, please. David Ben-Gurion, if you fly into Tel Aviv, the airport's called Ben-Gurion Airport, International Airport. National founder of Israel, first Israeli prime minister, mastermind behind the 1948 strategy. And I could have, I mean, we've all seen this now, everyone in this room, but dozens and dozens of quotes. We must expel the Arabs and take their land. Next slide, please. So once more, the historic maps. On my left, facing the images, was the UN partition plan for Jewish state, 55% of the land. Moving one over is following Israel's war of colonial conquest and ethnic cleansing. It seized 80% of the land. The red there would be Jordan occupied the West Bank, Egypt occupied Gaza. What regimes are in power in those countries, we're going to come back to because that's extremely important. These regimes are not friends of the Palestinians at this time. And then in the 1967 war, which is really a key turning point, but we can get back into that in discussion. Israel now occupies the West Bank, militarily, politically, totally. Gaza also occupies the Sinai, which is Egyptian, and the Golan Heights. And this is today, Israel still occupies West Bank and Gaza and still occupies Syrian's Golan Heights. Next slide, please. So by definition, Zionism is apartheid. That's why I read that recent ruling by the Supreme Court ratifying what's already been the Constitution of Israel since 1948. Israel is an exclusively Jewish state. This is the Prime Minister of South Africa in 1961. This is the heyday of apartheid South Africa when they're still completely in control. 1961, Umkhonto we Sizwe was just being formed to launch the sabotage campaign. It's the height of apartheid in South Africa. The South African Prime Minister says the Jews took Israel from the Arabs after the Arabs had lived there for thousands of years. For that, I agree with them. Israel, like South Africa, is an apartheid state. And you may not know, but you probably do, that Israel not only backed South Africa during those years of apartheid, but armed it and helped it to develop nuclear weapons. When the ANC came to power in 1994, South Africa dismantled its nuclear weapons program. Next slide, please. After 1956, of course, that's when Egypt nationalizes the Suez Canal. France, England, and Israel attack Egypt. Egypt wins, but the United States backs Egypt because it has a different plan, a more sophisticated, even more sinister plan for this region and for Israel, for the Palestinians. So after 1956, the US becomes the principal imperialist backer of Israel. And part of the strategy now is to contain Arab nationalism, socialism, and for a more deeper world capitalist control of the Middle East. Can't see the image really very well, but there's the United States saying you need to accept the existence of Israel to the tiny Palestinian, but of course Israel doesn't need to accept even the literal physical existence of Palestinians. Next slide, please. So after this slide, we move towards a conclusion. Thank you for your patience. Have to say something about Palestinian resistance. You might recognize that image at the top. It's a famous iconic image. And of course, in the middle too, from the Intifadas. 1921 to 1929 and then 1936 to 1939 are major milestones in Palestinian uprisings against British colonialism, especially 1936 to 1939. Tragically, horribly, the Zionists who are now in Israel, in Palestine, what will become Israel, they're seeing the Palestinian resistance to the British as part of the same way that anti-colonial struggle is taking place at that time all over the world, throughout Africa, Caribbean, everywhere. The Zionists are watching, and they will quite keep lists of the Palestinians leading resistance to British colonialists. And in 1948, with the violent creation of the Israeli state, those Palestinians will be rounded up and summarily executed. Most powerful World War II, most post-World War II Arab regimes were feudal kingdoms backed by the colonial powers. Today, those feudal kingdoms backed by world capitalism, and now they have their own wealth, is Saudi Arabia to this day, Jordan to this day. But we're talking about the creation of the state of Israel, 1948. These are all feudal kingdoms. 1950s and 1960s, there's uprisings, Arab nationalist, anti-colonial, popular uprisings. Brings Gamal Nasser to power in Egypt, and radical nationalism, Nasserism. And they're springing up everywhere, socialist movements, communist movements, and the Ba'athist movements. The original Ba'athist movement was quite radically nationalist, took power in Iraq and in Syria. And so part of the strategy when the US takes over in the Middle East as the dominant external power is to squash the nationalist, socialist, communist movements. So 1964, the PLO is founded against the wishes of the conservative Arab regimes. 1965, Palestinian guerrillas launch armed struggle, and they call themselves the Fedayeen, people of the sacrifice. The PLO adopts the goal in 1969 of a, quote, democratic secular state for all of Palestine, that the PLO wants to push Jews into the sea is not only a complete lie, but it's actually the reverse. 1948, when the Jews were carrying out mass massacres and ethnic cleansing, they literally pushed tens of thousands of Palestinians into the sea who had to get on little lifeboats or simply drown in the Mediterranean. So it's the exact reverse. And in 1974, the PLO proposes the two-state solution. 1988, the PLO renounces armed struggle. 1993 is the Oslo Accords are signed after 2 years of negotiation. The Palestinian Authority is installed in the occupied territories. These days, most Palestinians would look at that authority as a collaboration force with Israel. Some of the Palestinian organized resistance movements are Fatah, the PFLP, Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, DFLP, Democratic Front for Liberation of Palestine, the PSP, which is the Palestinian Socialist Party, Hamas, Islamic Jihad. Two intifadas from 1987 to 1993, and then from 2000 and on, ongoing mass civic struggles. And apart from those organizations that I already mentioned, more significantly, is Palestinians organizing themselves into endless amounts of their own civil society organizations. 170 Palestinian civil society groups launched the BDS, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions Global Movement in 2005. That's one of our many weapons of solidarity with Palestine that we have to expand. Next slide, please. So after this slide, I move towards the conclusion. United Nations resolutions 194 and 242. 194 is approved in 1948, ratified continually every single year, including in 2023 at the United Nations, by a virtually unanimous United Nations, that Palestinians have a right to return to where they were expelled from in 1948 and for compensation. And resolution 242, approved in 1967 and ratified continually, evokes international law on, quote, the inadmissibility of acquiring territories by war, calls for Israel to withdraw to the 1967 borders, the right of every state to, quote, live in peace within secure and recognized boundaries, and a, quote, just settlement of the refugee problem. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, I lied again. I know I have a overhead which says now the conclusion, which we'll go through, but I guess one more. So I took these three photos. This is refugee camp outside of Bethlehem, which is right now under siege by settlers, but mainly by the IDF. And here's historic photos. I took pictures of those photos, and those photos are on a community center, on the walls of the community center. Freshly expelled from their own homeland, that's their refugee camp. Today is the same refugee camp. I'm taking a picture of my Palestinian friends taking me around. But look what I wrote at the top, because we just read the two United Nations resolutions which say Palestinians have a right to return. So what I wrote on top, the Jewish state would collapse if refugees returned. And we're going to see why. And now I'm absolutely sure the next slide is going to be this, how we summarize the conclusion. Oh gosh. Well, sorry, it is coming, but this is equally extremely important. Okay, here's the question we have to ask ourselves. This is part of our struggle to confront that Hezbollah, right? The Israeli propaganda machinery. So this is crucially important. That Israel is founded, and you can read all about this, by the way, if you're just gonna read one book on the founding of Israel through ethnic cleansing and massacres, etc., make it Elon Pape's book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Israel. I don't know if you have it here, Viva, again. Palestine, so sorry. So the state is founded, literally founded on ethnic cleansing, on massacres, on summary executions, mass summary executions, on concentration camps, on confiscation of Palestinians' personal property. You've all seen either in movies, fictitious movies of World War II, or actually real scenes, how when the Nazis threw Jews into concentration camps, they went into the houses and occupied their houses, but they also took all their personal belongings, their furniture and everything, and made it their own. And then the Jews, they would have to take their jewelry off and put it in a pile, and the Nazis would take their jewelry. Okay. The Zionists did the exact same thing to the Palestinians. Okay. Identical on a junior scale, because it's a smaller situation. So the key question here, and this is absolutely crucial here, how could it be that Jews who suffered the Holocaust embrace an ideology and political project that is a close cousin of Nazism and is conducive to genocide? And the answer is the Holocaust industry. That's part of the Zionist project, manipulating and weaponizing Jewish grief and suffering and the memory of the Holocaust. So what the Zionist project does is a profound form of trauma manipulation. You make Jews feel, first, that there's an existential threat still hanging over them. Secondly, that the only way they can be protected from that existential threat is by a blind defense of the Israeli state and the Zionist project. Then, third, you inculcate a siege mentality in them. Then, fourth, you consistently, across the board, dehumanize the Palestinians and dehumanize any critics, like all of us in this room, of Zionism, as representing that existential threat. So that's the Zionism's Holocaust industry strategy. It has to be masked by inculcating a psychopathic victimhood complex and constantly renewing it on a daily basis. Thank God, we have a new generation of anti-Zionist Jews now leading this struggle against genocide, including Jewish Voices for Peace. Yes. And Israel, US, because the United States is not just complicit, but is making possible and enabling this genocide. Israel, US is now losing the battle for political legitimacy. That is so important. Can't emphasize it. Israel may be dominating or trying to dominate the military battlefield, but they're losing the battle for legitimacy. Next slide, please. Okay, as promised. So, by conclusion, the political economy is really genocide. Why genocide? Why now? 4 points. Israel's demographic crisis, 1. 2, Palestinian proletariat has now become surplus humanity. 3, the role of militarized accumulation in a global war economy. And 4, how can world capitalism facing chronic stagnation, a major crisis of overaccumulation of capital, how can they break out of that world capitalism, the transnational capitalist class, by violently cracking open new space for transnational capitalist expansion? So next slide, please. So Israel's demographic crisis, this is the Zionist version of replacement theory. Here we have replacement theory that white racists say we're going to be no longer be a majority and they're going to be replaced. Okay. And so the Zionists have a similar situation right now. So you can see that wall over here is, of course, that's the wall that kept Jews in the Jewish ghetto in Germany, but this is Warsaw. And then that's the Zionist wall, a photo I took of the apartheid wall in Bethlehem. But here's the thing: there are 7 million Jews in Israel. 1 million have already migrated back to the United States. So there's 1 million Israeli citizens here in the United States. And there's a constant outflow. And the Zionists cannot seem to attract enough Jews to migrate into Israel. There are 3 million Palestinians in the West Bank, a little more than 2 million in Gaza, and 2 million, or a little more than 2 million in Israel, and there's a higher birth rate. So there is more Palestinians than there are Jews in historic Palestine. And in order to have a Jewish ethnically exclusive state and to legitimate it, the Jews have to be a majority according to the Zionist project. So each time Palestinians threaten to be a majority, there's a new round of ethnic cleansing, intensified repression, and occupation. And leading now to the current far-right fascist government's desperate attempt to resolve the Palestinian problem by pushing forward an expansion of settlement in the West Bank and now this genocide against Gaza. That's one of the four concluding points. The second, expanded, oh, well, here you can visualize it very quickly. That's, this was at the time of the partition plan on the left. The green is where Palestinians live, the white is Jewish lands. That's after that was the partition plan, the second one. That was after the 1948 war, that's today. But it doesn't resolve the demographic crisis that Zionism faces. Next one, please. So the second, Palestinian proletariat as surplus humanity. So this is crucially important. We in sociology, we analyze different types of racist structures, but particularly two. The first one we call the disorganization of the working class and the super exploitation of one sector of the working class. So post-Civil War, post-slavery in the United States, there's two groups that's what the structured racist structure we have in the United States, right? So there's a single US working class, but it's ethnically, racially divided. And Chicanas in the Southwest, where we are right now, and blacks in other parts are the lower rungs, subject to racial oppression. So those sectors of the US working class are super exploited and super controlled. That's one type of racist structure. The other type of racist structure we talk about is exclusion. This is where the ruling groups need the resources of those that are going to be subject to the racist structure, but they don't need the labor of those groups. That's the situation with Native Americans or indigenous in North America. Their land was needed, but not their bodies, not their labor. They didn't need their labor because there were black slaves and there were European immigrants. Only the land was needed. So the indigenous are genocided here in the United States. What's happening now in Israel, in Palestine, is a very similar situation. Since 1948, there's been this historic tension. The Zionists expel the Palestinians, but really still need their labor. Palestinians are this subjective, super exploited, super controlled labor force for the Israeli economy. That's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation is the Palestinians are expelled, but their labor is not needed. It's always been from 1948 to 2024, that tension. Which way will Israel go? Super exploitation or expulsion? But starting in 1993, in the midst of the Oslo Accords, Israel imposes its closure policy. It locks in Palestinians in the West Bank. In Gaza, 2006, locks Palestinians in. So Palestinians move from being super exploited with that tension always there to being completely surplus humanity, a proletarian that Israeli and transnational capital does not want to or need to exploit, only standing in the way of the Zionist project. So now you have those pressures for absolute outright genocide. Why genocide? Why now? It should be as no surprise, there's this massive importation of transnational migrant labor. Of course, we have it right here where we're speaking. Of course, capitalist class in the United States imports Mexican, Central American, other immigrant labor. You can be super controlled and super exploited because you don't have political rights, because you don't have citizenship, because you can be deported at any time. So now in Israel, you have Filipino, Thai, Nepalese, Indian, Eastern European, North African, Kenyan, transnational migrant workers can be deported anytime. You might have noticed in the news, Hamas killed Filipinos, Thais, and Nepalese and took some of them hostages. That's the story going on here. And the larger story, why this is not just a struggle for justice in Palestine, why it's our life and death struggle for global capitalism, and the verge of fascism and World War III. The larger story is that worldwide, there's a dramatic expansion now of surplus humanity. Billions of people are simply locked out. Global capital has no need for several billions of people. And so if this genocide is consummated in Palestine, it is holding up a mirror to what surplus humanity is in store for all around the world. The ruling groups will say the Israeli model, genocide, because that surplus humanity can rise up. So Gaza is a real-time alarm bell, genocide and political tool for resolving ruling classes' problem of surplus humanity. Wei and Wen, my graduate student, my comrade in struggle here, we just wrote an article about this. Right here. Next, the third of these four things, why genocide, why now? Militarized accumulation by repression. Here's what's going on. So you know the figures on global inequality. 1% of humanity has more than 52% of the world's wealth. 20% of humanity has 95% of the world's wealth, and even that's misleading, because within that 20%, it's all the way concentrated on top. 80% of humanity has only 5% of the world's wealth. So under these conditions, capital cannot accumulate. There's no market. The global economy has all of its productive power, and it can't move forward. So capitalism, global capitalism, is in a chronic crisis of stagnation that started especially in 2008 with the global financial collapse, and it's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So the ruling groups have turned to what I call militarized accumulation and accumulation by repression. How do you keep the global economy going? How do you keep making profits? Wars and conflicts and genocide and repression and social control system and border walls and digital surveillance and police state, et cetera, et cetera. This becomes wildly profitable. It becomes an outlet for unloading all of the surplus accumulated capital and making new profit. And at the same time, it allows you to control the masses of the working classes and surplus humanity. Okay. So how this relates to Israel, Israel's at the heart of the global military industrial surveillance homeland security complex. As I said at the beginning of the talk, it is a totally militarized economy and society. The generals are in charge. The IDF is the backbone of Zionist Israel. So, and Israel thrives off of war and conflict. So the genocide in Gaza is a new opportunity for profit making. It shouldn't come as any surprise that Morgan Stanley financial CEO said the Gaza war is great for our portfolio. Okay, so that's also why Israel provides crucial support for dictatorial and authoritarian regimes all around the world. A friend of mine couldn't come. She just got back from Guatemala. When the Guatemalan genocide was taking place in the 1980s, those are Israeli arms and Israeli advisors all over Latin America, all over the world. Okay. So as the global economy stagnates, genocide becomes enormously profitable and attractive and resolves political and economic problems for the ruling classes. And then fourth and finally, well, an image to go along with what I just said. Social control, repression, warfare, genocide, enormously profitable and politically useful for global capitalism in crisis. Israel's a model for global genocide. I took both, well, I didn't take that photo, I gave some of my camera, because that's me. But I'm in Hebron, in occupied West Bank, and that image, I'm passing through where most good fortune of Hebron has been turned over to settlers. And I'm passing through where Palestinians are to where the only settlers or visitors like me can pass through. That image, of course, can be LA in 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, it already is digitally. There's already a police state here in LA. How do you control the masses who are super exploited and locked out? I don't need to tell anyone that story here. But that, again, Israel is holding up a mirror to what it's going to look like, starting to look like already all around the world. And this on this is the graffiti that the settlers spray painted in Hebron. It says, "Gas the Arabs." So here's people whose parents or grandparents may have survived the Holocaust is spray painting, "Gas the Arabs." Next. So the fourth and final response to the question, why genocide right now, is the ruling groups, the transnational capitalist class, needs to violently crack open new space for transnational capitalist expansion. There's these enormous pressures for a violent capitalist expansion throughout the Middle East, very importantly, but also throughout the entire world. Throughout the entire world. So genocide is primitive accumulation in Gaza. The limits to the expansion of global capital must be overcome by technologies of death and destruction. So we've had, in the last 30 years, a very rapid globalization of the Middle East. Israeli capital has integrated with Gulf capital and with transnational capital from all over the world. Transnational corporate and financial investments has poured into the Middle East, into energy, tourism, high-tech, construction, infrastructure, finance, luxury consumption. And when I say transnational capital, I'm not just talking about the West. Gulf capitalists, they are not the friends of Palestine. If they're coming out denouncing what's going on in Gaza, that's because their own masses are right below them. You might have seen the scene of maybe 70, 80, 90,000 Egyptians filling a stadium 2 days ago, saying, we will give our lives for Palestine. The military dictatorship in Egypt is scared of those masses. That's the only reason any of these Arab regimes might say something positive about Palestine. Because those capitalist classes in the Middle East are fused with Israeli capital, fused with transnational capital from around the world. These are globalized circuits of accumulation. Common transnational capitalist class interests trump any political considerations. That is why the notion of Israeli-Arab conflict is an anachronism. The Abraham Accords were signed in 2000, I forgot the year, 2018, I think, don't quote me, might have been earlier, I lost track. But the Abraham Accords were signed between Israel with the US mediating, Trump mediating, in 2017. With the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and one other small country, and they normalized relations with Israel, and now there's hundreds of thousands of Israeli tourists go to those destinations. The culmination of this normalization of Arab regimes and Israeli Zionist regime was going to be Saudi Arabia normalization. Hamas enters the scene and puts that whole project on hold momentarily. But this is more than old-fashioned settler colonialism. It's the face of a global capitalist system that can only reproduce through bloodshed, dehumanization, torture, and extermination. Next slide, please. So you can just see these images as I wrap up. This is Netanyahu brought this map to the United Nations on September 22. Little more than two weeks before the Hamas attack. Notice how in Israel, there's no Palestine. And so he's trying to show how this massive new corridor going east-west through the Middle East for global capitalist expansion in the region. Next slide, please. Those are gas and oil fields. In Gaza, in the Mediterranean Sea, which is Palestinian waters, how can you get at that? Because Palestinians stand in the way. Genocide them, and you get the gas and oil. Next. Palestinians and surplus humanity standing in the way of major global capitalist expansion. There's the Ben Gurion Canal Project, devised in 1965, put on hold, recently been revived. Again, the only thing that stands in the way of that canal, because the Suez Canal cannot handle all the global traffic. A boat got stuck there, a cargo ship a few years ago showed that it's vulnerable, revived this project. Who stands in the way? Dozens. And down here, what's the solution for global capital? Expel them into Egypt and the rest of the world. That's why Israel says, yeah, they can go to the Congo, they can go there. West Bank, expel them into Jordan, the rest of the world. That's one solution. Palestinians don't want to leave. Egypt doesn't let them in. Genocide. Next slide, please. So this really is my conclusion, this and the final image. So that is our answer. Why genocide? Why now? But here's, again, not just solidarity with Palestine, but our own survival is at stake in Palestine. Battle lines being joined in the Middle East reflect global battle lines. Will Israel become a model for how ruling groups deal with global surplus humanity? A model of global genocide? So right now, as we speak, the global correlation of political and class forces hang in the balance. It's not determined. Our battles, as we wage them now, are shaping what's going to happen. Fascism is trying to take over everywhere. It's winning in plenty of places. And there's also popular mass revolt all over. And the correlation of class and political forces here are in the balance. Israel can win. It may tip the balance against us. So global capitalism is in crisis. I want to conclude, there's an image to conclude, which is the next slide, and it's definitely the last slide with an image. But I want to conclude analytically by saying, let's remember World War II. It didn't start in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. It started in 1936 with the Spanish Civil War. That civil war was lost by the Spanish partisans, by the socialist, communist, anarchists, and the Republicans. It was won by Franco, the fascist dictatorship. It was only after that victory of fascism that then we could move into generalized fascism and World War II. Unbelievable devastation. I'm suggesting that we're in a similar situation right now. Genocide, Zionism, US West wins here. This paves the way for World War III. So this is our struggle as much as it is our solidarity with Palestinian struggle. So the final image. Palestinian symbol of popular rage and global intifada against global capitalist status quo, also a symbol of the extremely high stakes for humanity. Thank you.
Actually, will you turn on the lights? Thank you so much. Well, actually, it's a small space, so if it's all right with you, William, I'm happy to turn the microphone over to you and you select the folks that, no, you sure, or that's fine, over.
Should we take a 5-minute recess for
Yeah,
water, for?
and I have
bathroom
80
breaks?
bottles of water in my trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's take a 5-10 minute
Yeah.
break and then we'll reconvene in just a little bit,
Then if you
okay?
have to leave, we won't take it personally. We know it's hard to.
Thank you, we'll be back, 5-10 minutes.
Jose,
Very cool, very
And
cool.
there's coffee and pastries up here in the front.
If you
I
need
want
to go
pastries.
through Monarca, it's a coffee shop next door. You can go use their bathroom. They're very nice people. So there's coffee, there's pastries.
Rosemary, grab me a pastry.
yeah, yeah, you're just like, it's, but it's good, it's like, you can't just leave it. You gotta bring it down.
How you doing? Good to see you.
You
Hi, ¿cómo estás?
Hey.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
There's water. Anybody needs water?
Yeah. Oh, they're angry. Yeah. I see. Yeah.
There's water if anybody would like some water. If you guys were waiting outside, this is your chance to come in.
It's kind of like you're kind of right now like moderating like a style when you go to Magic Mountain and there be people on the road. Oh, okay. ¿Cómo ves? A lot.
That's probably the best picture we've had here.
Oh, yeah. On the subject. Déjale saber.
And it's good to see everybody waiting outside.
Yeah, because this is a historical breakdown. And the analysis is framed by
¿Te están escuchando aquí?
¿Mande?
¿Te están escuchando aquí?
Oh,
You don't mind?
I
Should I mute it?
no, mute me, please.
All right, thank you, Viva. Thanks again. And as I said, again and again and again and again for the work that you're doing and the organizing and the very thought-provoking things that are taking place here. But it's not just thought-provoking, it's the sort of discussions and, as I said, you know, thinking, reading, speaking, singing, poetry, and so on, that has led to some very important things here in the community. You know, very tangible victories here in the community, like the recent win, right, to keep the space, right, to combat the gentrification and the displacement of, you know, the local shops here on Cesar Chavez Avenue by, of all things, transnational capital. So this presentation, your presentation today makes a lot of sense for us. I'd like to begin the Q&A portion of our discussion this evening by asking folks to consider not just, of course, certainly, I'll let the sirens pass by. Certainly consider very fundamentally and centrally, of course, Professor Robinson's presentation, but there's an aspect in his presentation that is particularly salient at this moment. There's actually two, as far as I'm concerned, and I hope that in some way they figure into the discussion. And I'll leave that up to you if you'd like to, you know, pursue these two different avenues. One has to do with the historical, a kind of historical parallel. Perhaps if I can be as bold as to say a historical precedent, and that is the Spanish Civil War as a kind of Nepantla, as I've used in other contexts, as a kind of liminal moment in which we find ourselves, right? And if we are conscious to it, and this leads to the second aspect that I'd like to address here, right? That is, if we are conscious to the fact that we are in a liminal moment right now, and if we are conscious and thoughtful, and then act upon our vision of the readjustments and the reconfigurations, the new geographies, the kind of displacements about which we've read certainly in our group here, you know, around reckless terrorism, primitive accumulation, that if we can think about the situation in which we find ourselves currently here in Boyle Heights, as far as gentrification is concerned, right, as one aspect, but then of course, to think about a second and corresponding and linking component of all of this, which is consciousness raising, right? And that's the work that's happening this evening as well. So we can think about ourselves in space, and then think about space and the things that are happening in space, and then how we can become actors in this moment. So if somehow, you know, your questions can address that, I think it'd be fabulous. But at this point, I'll leave it up for folks to ask a question and or ask questions, and then we'll proceed with the Q&A from that point forward. Yes, sir.
So I guess mine's kind of a really depressing question about the election that's coming up. You know, we have to decide really between a Zionist warmonger or a fascist pig.
That is also a Zionist.
Yeah. So, you know, I guess my question is, like, young people, we deserve better than this. We deserve better than these two candidates. And, you know, how do we organize to really change the two-party system that is so embedded and invested in this, like, extension of American empire? This extension that's helped perpetrate the Rwandan genocide, the Pinochet regime, the Duterte regime in my home country. So yeah, I guess like my question is, you know, how do we organize to change that two-party system, especially as this election is so like very dire and very depressing. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Professor. I know the CSU campuses are going on strike next week, full week, and we stand in solidarity.
Thank you. Okay, wonderful. Welcome.
Well, I have my own views on that, but I don't really see this as a question and answer session, but rather an open mic for us to have a collective discussion. So I certainly have my own views on that, but maybe I probably feel more comfortable passing the mic around on that one.
That was his hand that I saw, but I'll do it quick. Yeah.
My name is Carlos Montes. I live here in Boyle Heights. I'm a member of Central CSO. We've been fighting against the LAPD police killing the Chicanos for years, right? Against privatization, support the anti-gentrification program. But I'm part of the national group. We're having a massive opening day march on the RNC, first day, to defeat the right-wing reactionary Republican. But we also have hundreds of members in Chicago doing a march on Chicago at the opening DC. So I invite you to do that. But my question is, do you share if you know about the resistance, Hezbollah, Hamas, Iran, Houthis? Do you know about that? Can because I see a rising resistance against U.S. imperialism and Israel military might by, Iran, Yemen, etc. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I can, but before I do that, you're finished with that, or, yeah.
Sure, go right ahead.
Yeah, sure. Actually, on a very similar note to that, something that came up in this presentation for me that I've been going on a deep dive about recently is not only the Hezbollah that Israel creates in a proactive way, but also like what it does to undermine and intentionally sow chaos. Like what was being discussed about how they intentionally attacked both British and Palestinian targets in the 1930s as Zionist settlers. I was reading recently about Netanyahu's financing of Hamas over the past couple of years, and specifically how that's actually like led to this moment and how he was banking on this because he was already on trial for corruption and stuff this year. This is going great for him in that it's it's a unifying enemy for people. And so I'm thinking about like the global connection of that kind of behavior and that kind of like intentional undermining. And I see that and also like a parallel to movement strategy here. Like how do we as we are organizing not only in direct action, electoral action, community aid, whatever, how do we prevent ourselves from, and how do we protect ourselves and our communities from being infiltrated or having our emotions and our passions, intentionally, given into a different perspective or a different place.
Yeah, I want to build on that question and insight in part because it feels like a lot of the media stuff that I've been watching, mainstream stuff, like the precedent admission, it seems, for anybody on the left is that you have to admit and condemn Hamas as a terrorist group, as a fundamentalist group, and so on and so forth, without a proper historicization of the emergence of these particular forms of extremist ideology, which I think are tied to the destruction of leftist movements during the Cold War, right? And the vacuum that was left by that gets filled by, these sort of unsavory characteristics, right? That often are a consequence of the decline, the sabotage, the destruction of the whole sort of like Cold War repression of leftism, communism across the globe, right? So I think to build on our comrade's question here, maybe if we could open up the discussion and think about the emergence of these groups in the larger historical context.
I want to choose my words carefully and respond to some of that. And I think one of our biggest enemies, in part, comes from our enemies, but in part is in ourselves, and that is sectarianism. And this is not a moment for sectarianism. I'm not referring, I don't only know a handful of people here, I'm not referring to us here, but the larger left project in the United States and worldwide. And, I think at a time like this of crisis and when so much is at stake, we need to think in multiple ways about united fronts. I think right now, and we're living it, a united front against Israeli genocide. And all of the different groups that have come together and no one's questioning anybody else with, at least with regard to unconditional support right now for Palestinian life. Right, and beyond that, we need to think about United Front Against Fascism. And I don't have the answer to what the young comrade was saying with regard to what we do with these two candidates, which are pretty much the same. But certainly we need to think about a united front against fascism. And your point, I think, is also very well taken. Right now, objectively, Hezbollah is a force in defense of Palestine, right, of Palestinian lives, and could do a lot more. In the long run, in a larger picture, Hezbollah, Hamas, etc., as you pointed out, emerge in the context of a vacuum of the left, revolutionary left, in the context of the historic defeat of the 20th century left in the aftermath of the Cold War. In the long run, Hamas is not an ally of the global proletariat, but we're not in the long run this minute. This minute, we're in defense of Palestinian lives and against a fascist takeover of the world. So I'm putting these out as discussion points. I don't have the answers.
To Carlos's point about resistance, it is a resistance. It is a united front. It's not just people coded as Hamas. It's like you listen to the groups up there. They have put aside for whatever happens, their sectarianism, and they're united front against if there's a resistance. Hamas stands for that's a lesson for people here in the United States to try to do the same thing, because it's going to get worse. Whoever gets elected, it's going to get worse. Right. And you've laid it out right there. This is more. The leaders of countries are now, even though Mexico is going to take place to take the court, Mexico's got to deal with Israel with Pegasus. And they're challenging folks. At one point, AMLO was a friend of the Zapatistas, and now he's not. He's going after them with military troops. So there's contradictions of everybody. I just found an article that Germany made a big deal with Israel before this in August to sell Israel selling Germany weapons. Huge, with the whole. So there's all these things, and the leaders of the countries are more leaders of capitalism, like we say. It's a war of capitalism, and they're coming for what's next. So we all just things are going to get. Think things are bad now. Things are going to get shitty as we go around.
Okay.
So.
He brought up a good point about Germany. Germany prides itself as like the country that constantly points it out that like we don't forget about the Holocaust. We will never forget about what we did. But somehow they've militarized that like historical memory to sell and give money to Israel to commit genocide against Palestinians. So it's such a like dichotomy to like witness and see that.
I guess I would say.
Well, the gentleman was just talking about the way the media portrays not just this, but everything in general. Just follows a couple of like bullet points that they repeat over and over again to just dissuade any kind of intellectual conversation or anything open-ended or any opportunity to learn. And I was listening. For me, it's frustrating. I'm trying to figure out how to, combat it. I'm trying to figure out, should I spend time just reading and learning how to talk to people better, just to try to, I don't know, my own little way win the war of influence. And the only way I could think about it, because I just have a lot of anger and resentment about it, is the way I feel is kind of the way Ivan Pape feels. He was talking to other college professors about just the issue of Zionism, and he kind of said he's talked to like all of these smart professors all over the world, and when Zionism comes up, because they're just like pro-Israel, or they're like Jewish and Zionists, they become infantile. Like like he's just insulting them. He's saying they're acting like children. That's kind of how I feel. And to me, like I've kind of made this resolution that like I can't be nice to people anymore that like really don't want to admit or want to justify what's been going on now and going on for generations. Like I just made this resolution, like don't never forget, like, don't forgive people if they're not going to learn, and just be tough on them. Like I think that's my resolution. I don't know how anybody else feels.
something I think about a lot in terms of how other people are buying into false narratives and repeating historic talking points that are like again very stylized and intentional of like red herring arguments to get you off of actually the historical context, to get you off of the actual issues of the situation and let them stay on their blogs, right? So I think it's like number one a question of how do we like I also, and I think everyone probably does struggle with this right now, like that same struggle of, do I try to convince this person that they should at least like read a book or something, or do I just walk away from them and spend my energy elsewhere? And I think like, I know for me, the answer is usually a yes and, or it depends sometimes who it is, right? Like if you have history with that person and you know they're really receptive and it's actually going to matter to make a difference in your friend group, at your campus, at your workplace, to have that conversation with them, then sure, maybe that's an idea, right? But like, otherwise, don't give these people your peace, man. Don't like waste your energy. Don't get your cortisol up. I think of all of the movement building that we're gonna have to do this year as more and more things break open as the genocide gets worse, as democracy in this country crumbles more and more, we will have a larger movement, and we're gonna have to pick and choose our battles. So that's a big thing that I'm thinking about as well. I'm always trying to avoid getting in keyboard fights that are not helpful. And some of them are, some of them aren't.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think we're always at the same time in the moment and in the long run, because otherwise you never get to the long run if you're always in the moment. And I think that the key thing about building a united front is, we here in this room and when we're all in these demonstrations, we're building a united front from below. And I think that's really what we need to concentrate on. More specifically, building a base among the working class, particularly the most exploited sections of the working class and among soldiers. And this is where I'm going to try to say something I think is probably pretty controversial. Okay? The United States is not, and the US-based transnational capital is not the only center of global imperialism. There is China. There's also Russia behind Iran, but I think China is the really big one. And as Lenin said, the nature of imperialism is world war. And so I think the comparison to the pre-World War II period is absolutely apt, although I think that might have started with Italy's invasion of Ethiopia even before the Spanish Civil War. That you could argue. And so I think, can we prevent all our world war? Maybe. If somewhere in the world we can establish a liberated zone, I would say for communism, that's strong enough to stop the war. Other than that, the coming world war, I think, has to be our opportunity to say, look, folks, it's now or never. It might literally be now or never. And when you're in war, who's key is the working class people, the most exploited, vulnerable. This is not true in Israel. Not so true in Israel anyway. But in the United States and most other people, it's the most exploited, oppressed, and section of the working class that ends up in the army because there's no other alternative. Yeah. And if you went to high school in Los Angeles,
centers, yep.
You know people who are in the military right now, probably for those reasons. And so honestly, you want to talk about being effective. First of all, y'all might get drafted. I'm not going to get drafted. I'm too damn old. And I didn't get drafted the last time because I was a female and they weren't doing that now, but now they are. They're gonna. But you might get drafted, and if you get drafted, you would have a role to play in spreading your ideas in the barracks. Okay, I know people who have done that. They have a lot of stories to tell. But you might also think about proactively going into the military if you're young and you don't know what you're going to do with your life. You want to be an important organizer. This is what he said, I think is really controversial. Organize for communist revolution in the military. And if not there, then wherever you are, because we've got to be talking about what is the long run. At the same time, we're talking about what's the short run, what's the immediate.
Let me do my last rap. Yeah, I'm 70 years old, 77, I'm still organizing. Like I said, working class here in Boyle Heights, right? Building the base. But worldwide, though, I want to throw out the united front against U.S. imperialism. U.S. imperialism is on the decline, but it's avaricious, it's fighting back. So, yeah, I support Iran, the axis of resistance against U.S. imperialism. And there's other countries throughout the world, Russia, China, that are supportive of the socialist bloc of the resistance. If we really look at what those countries are doing to resist and against U.S. imperialism. So I need to say we need to defeat U.S. imperialism, the united front worldwide. And of course, I agree with you, organizing folks here on the ground. So thank you for listening. Anybody else?
This side.
I'll give it to you all. You're the moderator.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I think it gives us a very robust understanding of the underpinnings of Zionism and, how it's just like, how there's no excuse for it really. You categorically debunked every single myth that we're sold about Zionism in the mainstream media. And I think it's really important that we're equipped with that, mentally, theoretically. So when we do have those conversations with people, we're ready to cut through that. I think that it's important for us to, think of where we go after tonight, because it's really important that we stay in the streets, that we stay in these teach-ins, that we stay in disruptions. These kinds of things are shaping the realm of public opinion. And when someone like Netanyahu is saying that he's worried about how young people are taking to the streets, that he's worried about how, there's like a global movement in solidarity with Palestinian people, that means that it matters. And so we have to stay in the streets. The Palestinian people have some allies, of course, but their allies aren't really, that much in their neighboring countries, except, with the exception of Yemen, Lebanon. Their allies are really the grassroots movement and the working people of the whole world, the global, proletariat, if you will. And I think it's really important for us to, think of how we continue the struggle, because the fact is that the oppression of Palestinian people is not really going to end unless the US empire completely collapses. They have said over and over again that if there was not an Israel, that they would have to create one. And, we can hope that they would, that we would be able to pressure our government enough so that they will eventually, tell Israel to do a permanent ceasefire. But even then, is that actually going to be permanent, or will it be a concession just to get us to quiet down our movement? So we have to continue to fight for it, because the Israel and the United States, as you said, are completely wedded together because of global capitalism. It's not going to let up. And the only way we end this is by ending the US empire. So we don't know how this particular moment is going to end. As you said, we're in a liminal place. But it's not like the US is going to naturally fall. It rests on the shoulders of everyone in this room, of people like us across this country, to actually put this empire to an end. And it's the US that has military bases all over the world. I'm sorry, it's not China that has military bases all over the world. And we're not Chinese citizens, we're US citizens. So we have a duty to every Palestinian person to which, their oppression is based on our tax dollars, to actually put an end to this global imperialist system. And to your question, what do we do, knowing now that there's no such thing as a lesser of two evils? That both parties are completely evil. That we don't have to hold our nose and vote for, vote blue no matter who. We cannot give up our leverage as a working class. We have to build an alternative. I'm hearing, the United Front. There are other candidates that you can vote for, even if they're not going to win. The ruling parties they make it impossible for any third party candidate to win, because they know that would be an existential threat to their rule. And so even if we vote, me personally, the way I organize, it looks like joining a political party. There are many revolutionary parties in this room tonight. You can join those. You can join your workers' union. For me, it means voting for a third party candidate, even knowing that they're not going to win, but that it's way better, because in the long run, electoral politics is just another tool in the toolbox that we can use to organize a united front of the working class.
I saw somebody sign over there, the guy with the cap.
I can say something.
Oh.
Professor, you said that, Jewish, I just want, obviously I'm a big fan of yours, but as you did say that, Jewish people are leading the way and leading the protest. Speaking as an anti-Zionist Jew, and I think I can speak for Jewish Voices for Peace, and if not now that, we are an accessory to the Palestinian people and the Palestinian youth that are leading the struggle. Palestinian Youth Movement, Palestinian Feminist Collective, SJP within our lifetime. I mean, they're doing beautiful stuff in New York. You see that every day, all over the country. And they're also in London, all over the world. I mean, that is the spearhead of the movement, is the Palestinian youth. I mean, you see the statements at the Palestinian youth movement. They talk about Leninism and the sharpening and contradictions. I mean, they are the epicenter of our movement. And we, as Jews, we use our visibility, because everyone's talking about Jews and existential threat to the Jews. So we as Jews, turn around and say, wait, no, this is an existential threat to Palestine and to the Palestinians in the face of an ongoing genocide. This is not about us. We're not going to do the navel gazing narcissism, and those are our leaders in this moment. It's the Palestinian Youth Movement, SJP, Palestinian Feminist Collective, all those guys. Those are the leaders that we follow. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
Woo!
I used to talk like I knew what I was talking about, but I do want to comment a little bit on the upcoming election. At the risk of sounding like a liberal, I actually wonder, and the U.S. imperialism needs to come down. Yes, Israel is there to hold up capitalism globally and all that, but do some Googling. This is not conspiratorial necessarily. I wonder if there's a forming Eastern Bloc that might be wanting, the guy who's the same as the other guy, saying they're all the same. And I'm not saying Trump is good or bad, but I'm saying that there might be forces that want the guy to win because the U.S. could balkanize. I don't know. Does anybody think that could happen? Does anybody think that balkanization might happen? Yeah. Empires fall, Babylon fell, Rome fell.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that maybe that's good, because we're really, if we're really about it, maybe that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm curious about and would like to see explained and articulated is the relationship between the war and the conflict, or however it is you might want to call it, in Ukraine, just before the contemporary, an existing war and conflict against the Palestinian people in Gaza, and what the relationship there might be as kind of chess game, if you will, to use that terrible metaphor. But in any case, that's just one thing that I've been thinking about that I'd like to see articulated. If anybody has anything to say about that, I'm all ears.
Well, at the time I was still an undergrad in history, I felt like every one of my friends asked me about what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Russia. But like when October 7th happened, not one text from a single friend that's not a history major about the war in Gaza. Because to them, the wars in Middle East, or the conflicts in Middle East, or wars in Africa, I don't want to say it's normalized for them. They're desensitized to it. And, I always tell them about right now, it's not that I don't care. I don't care about the war in Ukraine and Russia. That's not what I'm saying. But, whenever, like, to your point earlier about what you can do more to resist this Israeli, the Zionist charge, is that, I always tell my friends, like, go look up Frantz Fanon, go look up Edward Said, Angela Davis, Malcolm, Kwame Ture, read revolutionary works, and then come talk to me, and then see how, like, I've called them out. I'm like, Look, you guys constantly ask about Ukraine and Russia, but I have not heard you guys ask questions or post anything about the children of Gaza. So could also race play a factor? Just posting that question.
Something that I have been following a lot is the medical response and particularly the American Medical Association's absolutely cowardly stance on the genocide so far. In the first couple of months of the Ukraine war, to this day, in nearly since the Ukraine war broke out, there have been 119 casualties of patients and doctors. There have been over 6 times that amount in Gaza alone in the last 3 months. So there is a huge disproportionate amount. The AMA did issue resolutions and statements condemning Russia's attacks on healthcare and condemning the Ukraine war and calling for a ceasefire immediately. Months ago, they shut down that same resolution in their resolution committee, did not even let it go up for a vote. Meanwhile, Palestinian doctors are amputating their children's limbs on kitchen tables without anesthesia. And it's absolutely cowardly when you see the way that the Ukraine war is being used. And it is like, because like there are, you know, a lot of like blonde, blue-eyed victims of the Ukraine aggression, right? And so like that is going to be the media's focus. And it's just disgusting to see the medical institutions specifically just to leave their colleagues and patients across the world to die from this. Like it's just horrible. And so you can see a lot of how Ukraine and Gaza are being played off of each other in really messed up ways.
Thanks. Yes, race has a factor to do with that. Also the fact that Russia has always been played as a bad guy in the United States, right? The whole Red Scare, Communist Scare, etc., has allowed for that globally and also in the US. All of us here are activists or in some way informed and politically engaged. What I am interested in is in listening to how what is occurring in Palestine will set the global stage for the next stage of transnational capitalism. I am wondering how have we seen as activists that the genocide of Palestinians has impacted the common folk, the common worker in their political knowledge, engagements, understanding of the world powers, how it has shifted that for them, especially for folks who are not politically who are okay with working 9 to 5 and then, you know, being desensitized by
My dad's asking gonna get married,
etc. How has this changed?
Okay, let me mute this real quick.
And how will this aid us as activists, as community organizers, as revolutionaries? How are we organizing them and allowing them to come into our movements? Here we can throw these big words and all knowledge that we have amongst us, but what does it serve if it only stays in here? So how are we gonna walk out of here and then engage those folks? How are we gonna walk out of here and then use this momentum that is currently happening, use South Africa taking Israel to the international court, use all the videos showing, hey, you can't deny this is genocide. How are we going to use it? Because if we don't use it, it's gonna die off. That's what I'm wondering right now.
Primero voy a hablar en español. Quisiera dar gracias por tener su espacio y toda la gente que está aquí. Y es muy bonito escuchar palabras y es muy poderoso también como, bueno, yo soy del barrio de del distrito federal también, y es muy bonito escuchar todo eso, pero yo tuve la fortuna de mi educación, ¿verdad? Pero sí hay gente en nuestro barrio que no está expuesta a este tipo de conversaciones. Y, o sea, yo hablo con mi familia, pero hasta cierto punto, o sea, él se entiende lo humano se siente. Pero yo digo, igual, se tiene que ver afuera, no tiene que salir de aquí, porque es muy bonito decir, y estoy 100% with you guys, pero se tiene que ver, y se tiene que ver el apoyo, la acción, porque solo así también, we gotta reach our families some other way. And I'll try to say it in English. Yeah, I just basically just want to thank everybody here. It's like a beautiful space like guys created, like, you know, have these conversations, you know, as a former educator, just working, we're so suppressed. Like they offer these types of like bilingual or inclusive programs that the resources are not there. And it's like cultural appropriation for me. And it was really bothersome to see that. And then to see also like professors, you know, there's so much knowledge. So much knowledge being suppressed. And I've always told my supervisors, you know, these are the voices that you're hearing, the voices that the unheard voices. So it's time for you to hear. So, and not to sound naive and all, yeah, but I think presence out there, you know, I've been like looking on Instagram, like where do I go, East LA or Boyle Heights, and I see nothing. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if someone can help me correct me, yeah, not to put anybody on the spot. Maybe it's just me going out there by myself, you know. But yeah, like definitely, I feel like it needs.
I will give it back to her. It is time to make links. Thanks for bringing up what you're saying about the community and people. If I'm correct, this past month there was a caravan, another one from Central America, in which the people themselves, the migrants themselves, are identifying themselves as the working class. They are politicized. They are ready to get engaged. It's us in the belly of the beast that are sleeping.
Yeah.
The rest of the world isn't. Okay. Damn, ADHD really kicking my ass because I forgot what I was gonna say. Give me a moment. Thank you. Oh yeah, I forgot. Here you go.
Okay. I just, okay, it's.
William, I want to ask about the analysis about the political economy of the conflict of Gaza, because you talk about the surplus humanity or surplus labor that is that will be left there for kind of extractive industry, new accumulation or like that. So I was thinking if you if you have more information about which kind of infrastructure is already made or already prone to this movement in the political economy. And also if you also identify which industries will be the industry that will rise this new accumulation, because I think that that is one of the sides of the political economy, but the other side is also that the capitalist production of the means of destruction, this weaponry that you already write about the accumulation by repression. It's like we are completely actual, completely current, but that conditions for future accumulation that have to pass through this scenario of current accumulation that they don't have still. I think the infrastructure and the industry already already to put this surplus labor working in those areas and make this zone work. So I think that we're in the middle of these two scenarios when the capitalist production or the means of destruction have certain limits, material limits, and yeah, I was curious about how you connect these new industries of extractive in Gaza and how that can work.
I'll make some comments on three of the things that people have said. I want to say with regard to US imperialism, that we have to remember behind US imperialism is the empire of global capital. And right now, the United States, US imperialism is the spearhead for global capital. But there's something behind them. We've had earlier imperial vanguards of global capitalism. And we can have another one as well. We want to remember in the long term, we're facing transnational capital. And it has no nationality. It has an organizing center in Washington. but that's a longer discussion. I want to follow up with something that, very humbly, Joshua Martinez, back in the corner there, he was my undergraduate student, and then we kept in touch. And then I've been so admiring his role in helping to organize the solidarity activities and direct action here in Los Angeles. And Joshua, I agree with what you said, it's not that I disagree, but I want to say that part of the reason that the United States has given such unconditional bedrock of support to Zionism is because there's been a very significant Jewish community with a absolute adherence to Zionism. And so the participation of anti-Zionist young Jewish people, such as yourself, I think is crucially important. Sure, Palestinians are in the forefront of the struggle for their own liberation, but I don't think we can downplay the role of people such as yourself. And then third, this is it's an analytical discussion. It's a bit of a theoretical discussion, but one of the things that global capitalism has been in a process of radical restructuring and transformation for quite a number of years. We throw around the term neoliberalism, and it's a legitimate term, but behind that, there's very significant analytical analysis of global capital. And a big part of that analysis is finance. Finance is absolutely so central to everything that happens with global capitalism. It's extremely essential to gentrification right here in Boyle Heights, everywhere. And the thing is that finance links together every single sector of capital, right, worldwide, every single aspect of capital accumulation, every assault on every worker going to the grassroots level. And we don't see it. But I don't want to get into an abstract analysis of that. It's not the place for it. But the comrade, who, by the way, he's come up recently from Peru, so fantastic to have him here. What is at stake in if you wanted to identify capitalist sectors is, of course, military, is of course militarized accumulation, the war industry, but every single round of destruction brings reconstruction, and reconstruction involves engineering corporations and cement, including Cemex in Mexico is a big supply of cement for reconstruction after wars take place. Anything and everything, supply chains for military destruction involve food chains, and involves food and water, and I mean, endlessly, it's just as massive capital, but if I understood your question, and again, I don't want to get too abstract and theoretical, but if I understood your question, what links this all together and what we'll never lose in Gaza is that level of finance. And finance is something which really may be strangling Palestinians, but it's also strangling every single member of the working class, including the most downtrodden in the United States. The debt hanging over every member of the working class is global finance. And I just link that, I'll stop by linking that comment also to the issue of US empire. The global finance is not necessarily tied by an umbilical cord to US imperialism. It's beyond that.
One of the things that I'd like to put out there as well is the philosophical and the material, if you will, significance of the statement that, you know, we are all Palestine. Certainly at the philosophical level, certainly, you know, images of suffering families, mothers, children, etc. Certainly that suffering is one that we feel, and so at the philosophical level, there's a connection there that must be underscored. At the material level, and taking it back to what you've just said, Professor Robinson, I think is also very important to understand that when we say we are all Palestine, that is, as the Palestinians have become commodities, objects of bullets and objects of bombs and objects of displacement, objects of terror, so too are others, objects of the same kind. And so that when we recognize that we are not just philosophically united with them, but that we are also materially united with them, that we too, in different ways, in ways that are particular to the places that we are also subject to this kind of commodification. And so we really are all Palestine on that level too. And so your question, sir, is very important for me because it challenges us to recognize and to hold and to really understand that abstraction, you know, that, you know, it's very important. So I thank you for your question and your comment.
But I ran different. They're helping the resistance. You gotta support them. Go ahead, go for it.
Yeah, my question for this is I really, really appreciate this right now. And I also, there are certain other conversations I'm in that I wish that they could be here to hear this because of what you had with conversation. And at the same time, I wish there are other conversations that could be here. So my question kind of comes at the intersection of different conversations about the topic. And I wanted to thank you for bringing in Saeed and Fanan, because I think for me, the question of the American empire, why it matters in this room is because we're living in it. And one of the things I think about all the time is the extent to which we internalize, even when we think that we're resisting or fighting against, and what are the categories through which we think. And I'm really shaped by the difference between stratification, sociological differences among us that we sort of understand our material conditions similarly, and the ways that we are created to be human differently because of the places that we live in. And so Afro-pessimism teaches us about ontologies of difference, not just sociological differences, or I guess more grounded here, the question of being Palestinian, and if we are Palestinian, indigenous friends are saying it's not, yes, this is about global capitalism and our place in global capitalism. And yes, it's about surplus labor, but it's also about the destruction of different ways of being human that don't fit within global capitalism. But it's not just about global capitalism. It's about the possibility of being humans in different kinds of ways that are being destroyed. And indigenous friends say, we've gone through that. We see it happening. Yes, it's about capitalism, but it's also about different ways of being human. And it matters not just as a theoretical point, but what happens if we win, like what happens afterwards? Are we the same kind of humans or are we building something different? So how do we think about the material in relationship between the material and what we need to build so that we can be humans in different ways?
Thank you for that. I see people on the street. I see the preachers on the street. They're having a problem. I'm not with somebody else, but you know, they're out there talking about Jesus. Can we get out there talking about Palestine to the extent that we want to talk about people in the, you know, on the, I don't know. It's different tactics or something like that.
You know, I live on Boyle Heights. I always said that, right? And look, you know, we organize, but we're up against Victory Outreach. We're up against LAPD, you know, privatization. You know, and I struggle with some activists. You know, they're very religious. They talk about Israel and all this. Oh my God. And they only want to talk about working class issues, police abuse, etc. When we talk about Israel, they're so religious, they support Israel on religious stuff. You know, I don't give up struggling with them, you know. So, you know, we're infected by that, you know, the real fundamental Christian folk that are coming into the community and putting out their, and I apologize for any of you who are religious, right? But anyway, so we continue to organize. I mean, we work with moms, organize moms in the schools that fight against charter school privatization, right? And they're down, they're militant, they'll fight. But on some issues, you know, on religion, abortion, you know, they'll fight us on that. But they'll fight us against privatization, and then we bring up the role of capitalism, imperialism, and you know, and they're from Mexico, they're from Central America, so they understand. But you know, it's an ongoing struggle, so you got to organize in the working class, in the community, like you know, that you know, our strategy is to from the sixties, and you left from the sixties, what are the proletariat? What are the working class and organized? Strategic, I worked in the Phelps-Dodge copper refinery in Paso, Texas. And it's from 11 AM to 7 in the morning. Because those were the most militant and working class in El Paso, Texas, the Chicanos. And the Communist Party had been there since the 30s and the 40s. So I come in there, the new radical organizer, anyway, I'm still at it. Do you want to speak?
Real quick, to Donna's point, we would have to give, a lot of folks here would have to give a lot of material interest in voter, so then we have to be ready for that, to be a lot of the ways we live and what we do, and that as far as being human and being different. The second part, Christian Zionists, like Carlos was saying, there's more Christian Zionists from what I understand than there are, Jewish Zionists, at least in the United States, so that's also
Okay, so, that's the sign, it's. It's 8:30 now, thank you all, thank you, Professor Robinson. Thank you, Viva Padilla, and, I believe Rosemary Lee has one last, a very quick, very short.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if we could get a paper passed around for people who want to stay in touch in the future.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
There's another event tomorrow afternoon.
Just feel, you guys don't have to leave, we're just sending the event. You guys are feel free to mingle, feel free to hang out, discuss things with each other. There's pastries, there's things like that, there's coffee. The cumbias next door are about to start. So we know it's gonna get loud in here. That's why we're like, okay, we gotta stop it before that starts. You can go next door for the cumbias, but here will be the real discussion. So stay here, hang out, get to know each other. And we can pass around the paper in case you want to stay in touch with each other. And we can give that out to everybody and, well, that's it. Yeah, and, William, if you want to give some final thoughts.
Final words.
No, all I have to say is thank you so much, Viva, Gabe. And thanks so much.
And if you. Are you sorry? Oh, yeah. The register registry, they want to check that out. If you guys can help stack some chairs, that would be amazing, just to make some space.
If you guys can help us by stacking the chairs, that would be amazing. Just to make space for everybody. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
What?